guys, it's Ty with Ty the Dog Guy on the Daily, and I want to talk to you about how to help a dog get over fear, how to help a dog get over anxiety, how to help a dog get over these hurdles, these barriers that sometimes set them back. So the reason this came up is, excuse me, got bad air here in Utah. I was thinking of this. I was working with this client today, and normally I don't like to talk about clients. I don't want them to feel uncomfortable, but I think this is okay. I won't mention any names or anything like that. But anyways, great client. She came in with some kids, and so I don't know how old she is. She had kids that were teenagers, so maybe in her 40s or something like that, maybe late 30s. But she told me that this dog, the dog that we were working with, was the first dog that she had touched ever, or I think maybe picked up. Because I think maybe as a baby or something that, she'd been around a dog once or twice, but was so allergic to the dog that she had gone the next 30-something, whatever it is, years, and that this was the first dog in her entire life that she'd ever picked up. I thought I was fascinated. I was truly fascinated by that. Because I know not everyone comes from a dog family. I don't come from a dog family. My folks weren't into dogs and things like that. So like I say, I get it that not everyone's from a dog family or, is attracted to dogs or wants to be around dogs. So totally get that. But to have somebody who, for their first time at, let's say, 39 or whatever, however old she is, for the first time to pick up a dog just seems so strange to me and so unique and cool. And in fact, I think she'd even kind of mentioned that, because she was so allergic, from a young age, that she hadn't been able to be around dogs, and from that kind of came this fear of dogs, and she lives in an area that's very dog friendly, and there's dogs everywhere, and, there's a dog culture in this town that dogs are loose and running around and things like that, and it had been kind of a scary thing for her. And so for her to overcome this fear with this dog was tough, and she gets, a sweet little puppy, but he's very bitey, he's very nippy, and that just fed more into the fear. But in any case, great owner, just has done, the work that we've done and will continue to do more, has done a great job, and I think they'll be in great shape. But it reminded me, not to compare a client to a dog, well, I am, it reminded me of a lot of the fear that we see with dogs. So a lot of the fear comes from a lack of exposure or inappropriate exposure. And so the dog is afraid of other dogs because it didn't have the proper exposure, maybe none. Or maybe the exposure that it did have was inappropriate, that the exposure around other dogs was getting bullied or beat up or things like that. Or, it could be anything, maybe it's loud noises, and so now we've got a dog that wasn't exposed properly or wasn't exposed at all, and now here's firecrackers or thunder. Or go through the list, whatever it is, skateboards. I'm just thinking of things that dogs are often afraid of. Certain types of people, things like that. And so oftentimes it's a lack of exposure or inappropriate exposure that causes fear and anxiety to set in. And from there, it's this self-fulfilling prophecy for the dog. The dog's afraid, he gets nervous and scampers away, and he doesn't have to be afraid anymore. And realizes, oh, that actually worked. Maybe I'll keep doing that. Or maybe the reverse, gets afraid and barks and lunges, and now the thing goes away and the dog feels better. And so realizes, okay, maybe I need to just be aggressive and my fears go away. But in any case, dogs very, 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 very rarely will ever figure out how to deal with fear and anxiety on their own. They need us, the owners, as a catalyst to help them kind of work through it. There's a very simple, term that I would use. Now, it's a simple term, and it makes sense to people as I explain it, but, it's far more overreaching than just the term. But what that term is structured exposure. And so a lot of people think, if my dog's afraid of something, let me get around it. He's afraid of dogs, let's go to the dog park. He's afraid of kids, let's go around kids. He's afraid of this, let's go around that. And when we're doing that, we're typically just talking about exposure, just getting them around things. Now, exposure by itself will most of the time, if the dog already has fear of that thing, exposure will most of the time set the dog backwards, and the dog will become more afraid because the dog didn't have the tools to deal with it in the beginning, and just exposing him to more doesn't suddenly give him the tools. Every now and then a dog will be able to pop out of it, and from so much fear and adrenaline will, like, actually come out of it and be okay, but usually that's not going to happen. Because like I say, if the dog didn't have the tools before, it's unlikely he will 2 seconds from now when he's being terrified. And so structured exposure refers to exposing the dog to the thing that they're afraid of, but in a structured way. Perhaps it's often the structure typically is going to come from two areas, one from the dog and one from the environmental thing. And so the environmental thing, well, let me start with the dog. The first thing with the dog is I need obedience, and I need obedience at a very nice level such that the dog will listen to me rather than their own fear. If the dog says, cool, I get what sit means, but you don't understand there's a person over there and I'm afraid of people, so I'm not going to listen to you anymore, that's not a good enough level of obedience. I need a level of obedience that the dog says, I am afraid of people, that's a person, but I'm respectful of the commands and I trust you enough that I am going to sit, I'm going to do it. So that's the level of obedience that we need. That level of obedience allows us to have structured exposure from the dog's end, having the dog be under control, having the dog pay attention and look to me. And then on the other end, I want the environmental things as best we can to be exposed in a structured way as well. So if my dog's afraid of kids and I've done my due diligence and now my dog's obedient and now I'm going to approach kids, well, I'm not going to let those kids just manhandle my dog. If they're going to touch my dog and I feel that everything's safe, I'm going to set my dog up for success. I'm going to have the kid stop, hold out his hand, the dog's going to come up and, sniff him or whatever it might be. If I need structured exposure to other dogs, that's not happening at a dog park. That's going to be my neighbor's dog that's calm and friendly. That's going to be the dog that we're going to have structured exposure with, and we're going to build from there. So like I say, if you socialization and getting over fear is not exposure, it's structured exposure, and you have to remember that comes from two ends. Structured from your dog's end and structured from the end of the environment.